Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Dennis Fithian with you here, ready to get things underway. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, there's plenty to talk about as we sit here thinking about college football coming up. You know, it is the 16th of July, and coming up on this Tuesday is when the Big Ten coaches meeting starts. So we're inside of a week for that. Now, Michigan doesn't take to the podium and everything out there in Sin City until Thursday. So a week from tomorrow, we'll see Sharon Moore up there. I don't know. I don't have the schedule of events. I'm thinking that Moore will talk that day. And then the players that have gone out there to Vegas will also talk that day. But the players and coaches, maybe they could be available some other time. I'm just thinking a week from tomorrow. We'll see. And we do know there was a speculation by yours truly when training camp was going to start, and you back it off a month from the opener. That's always a pretty good guess. That was a little bit incorrect because it's July the 29th, which makes it, less than 2 weeks until fall camp actually starts. So that might, for you, be music to your ears and say, oh, yeah, it is right around the corner. It's happening. The summer's flying by. Or you could be like, man, that still seems like whatever. It kind of seems to me like it has gone quicker. I've really enjoyed the summer, and a lot of it has to do with the summer sports scene. I enjoyed watching, and it's been a long time since I had watched an all-star game, and I watched the all-star game last. It's been a long time since I'd watched a home run derby. I watched both of those things in the last 2 days, and you keep going through some of the other stuff. Like I watched around the 4th of July, 6 days, 5 games in 6 days of USA basketball under 19, and I just loved it. And it was a springboard from really last year when it was the Olympics and the USA team. It was fabulous theater watching the Olympics. I had never liked watching, not the Olympics, there's some things that I like watching, but I'd never liked watching basketball in the Olympics until last year, and I loved it. And then I loved the under 19. So I've found myself some fabulous things. I feel like the sport, but the biggest thing is that the Tigers have been relevant. And I do know for myself, I'll speak for myself, that when the Tigers are relevant and they give you something to watch, it makes the summer seemingly click by a little faster. So I don't know, that's whatever, it's your personal approach to that, and everybody's subjective, obviously. So I'm just telling you how it has worked out there for me. Now, you like college football, you're in the right place, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. And, you like college basketball? Will the Michigan basketball team be in contention for to go to Indianapolis for the Final Four in 2025, 2026? This year, is this a Final Four type roster for Dusty May in his second year? I'll tell you what I think about that coming up in this show. We've got just some college football news and notes. I've put together the top news. As soon as you think recruiting maybe has stopped a little bit, and it felt like it had petered out a little bit, and that Michigan was like, okay, now it's time to concentrate on the upcoming season. There'll be some more players and there'll be some flips and stuff like that. But as soon as it went down, now it's like it is recharged and it's back up, and there's a lot of different things going on. That will be involved in some of the top news. But I wanted to start with talking about Michigan making the playoffs this year. Playoffs, the 12-team playoff. And do I feel like Michigan is going to make the playoffs this year? So you're probably going to have to go 10-2. And I know that I've talked about this quite a bit, probably too much. But, sometimes I feel like it's 10-2. Other times I feel like it's 9-3. I changed my summer prediction to 9-3, but I am, as the days go by, more and more looking at the playoffs and thinking, Michigan and the playoffs, it could happen. It certainly could. Maybe I shouldn't be so, it's not negative. Maybe I shouldn't be so worried about some of the things that I would say, well, if you don't want to say worried, that concern me. Let me talk about some of those things that I would put in the category of concerning to me. And if you looked at the thumbnail for this show, right off, it's got a picture of Bryce Underwood. Never a bad idea to put that on your thumbnail. There is a picture of true freshman tackle Andrew Babalola, and it says true freshman starters. Now, that is something that does concern me as I think about the upcoming season. There's a lot that I like about Michigan this year. Maybe I should zero in on the things that I like and then, think about the other things that concern me. What I've done is put them both together. But I start right at the top thinking about the quarterback position and having a true freshman right from the get-go, a kid that has not turned 18 yet. He won't until next month. And you're handing him the keys to the quarterback position, and you're saying, make it happen for us. We're going to need you to lead us to the playoffs. Now, that's quite a responsibility. Over the past few years, we have seen more and more true freshman quarterbacks play. Heck, I was thinking today, one thing that I thought about, I went back and looked at Michigan's record when Chad Henne was a true freshman back in 2004. And Michigan that year, they only played 11 games. And so before the bowl game, they lost the bowl game by 1 point to Texas, that great Rose Bowl game against Vince Young. I think there's a kick at the end, if I recall correctly. They lose to Vince Young and the Longhorns, something like, 38-37. Great game. But Michigan loses, and that adds to their 2 regular season losses. They only had 11 games. And so they end up 9-3. And so you're thinking, well, not too shabby. And I think it's going to be not too shabby this year either. I think that Underwood's going to be good, and I think that they're going to be right there with that opportunity to get into the postseason. But a little bit of a concern with the quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to be – I think Underwood's going to be way better next year. I think he'll be way better than – but how good can he be right off the bat? We're all sitting around speculating and thinking about it, that he was way above the curve even in high school when he was starting as a freshman. Does that matter? Yeah, it matters. I mean, it's like when you look at him, I remember looking at him when he was a sophomore. That's the first time that I'd seen a video. He was, I think, wearing some Michigan cleats, and he was throwing to a Michigan recruit or a guy that ended up at Michigan. I don't remember who it was that he was throwing to, but it was somebody that you would know. But when you looked at him, he didn't look like a freshman. He didn't look like a sophomore in high school. He looked like he should have been in the NFL when he was a sophomore. So physically, I think he's good to go there. And there are going to be some downs, but they're a little bit concerned. I'm telling myself, I understand why I'm concerned about it. Now, I have a little bit of concern about left tackle as well. Highly talented true freshman Andrew Babalola. He may be the starter for the opener. And you're talking about, well, what are the most important positions on offense. We start voting. Quarterback's going to win. After that, the left tackle is going to win. So the two most important positions on the offensive line could be manned by true freshmen. Unheard of, never been done in Michigan history, but it's not set in stone. Heck, the quarterback isn't even set in stone that he's going to be starting. But the real possibility that you could have that, it's been pointed out to me. Look, this is a different era, and this is what happens when you're recruiting highly talented players like this, that they could be out there and that they could play immediately. So get used to it. And the thing that has me thinking that these guys just might be fine, that it could be Babalola and it could be Underwood, and not only may they be fine, but they may be fantastic, is just going back over the last 3 years. And I think about when Mason Graham was a true freshman, and the position, it's different. Of course, it's a different side of the ball. And it's different because Mason Graham, there were plenty of players that were in front of him, the good players. Guys like Mozzie, guys that were going to be first-round picks, were sitting there, and Mason Graham outplayed them all, and he ended up being a starter right off the bat. And unheard of kind of thing where you're thinking about, well, it's really tough at quarterback, really tough at left tackle, really tough at defensive tackle. And Mason Graham went right in there and was the best and was great right off the bat. And he continued that all the way through. So that gives me a little bit of pause to think about just how concerned I am. It gives you some promise that, hey, don't be that concerned about it. Talent wins out. Sure, these guys aren't going to be probably, there'll be some bumps in the road, however you want to put it. But so those two concerns I have up there. And then a little bit at wide receiver. I watched the spring game, and people are like, you can't take anything out of the spring game. Well, I did take that Jamar Browder, and it had two passes that were thrown to him that he dropped. Marks dropped one. I mean, those guys, that doesn't mean that they're just going to drop the ball all the time. Fred Moore dropped one. There are some drops that were out there. You're going to have to help the freshmen out a little bit, talking about the pass catchers. I don't know. Remember when Underwood threw the pick? We don't know who that was on. It could have been the wide receiver, Channing Goodwin, ran the wrong route. Could have been Underwood who made the wrong decision. We don't know about that, but he's going to be helped out. He's going to be helped out by a lot of everybody on the team, but getting some help from the pass catchers, I just say, would be nice. What I do think, and where I do think that he's going to be helped out, is this offensive line. And I've talked about Babalola, but the rest of them and how they've recruited and how they've coached and what their identity is, it's the offensive line. That's a lot of what has made them really in the history of their program, but the run that they've had, with the exception of last year, those 3 previous years, it was that offensive line. So that the running game, can they just be serviceable till you get how fast can Underwood get in there against Oklahoma, at Nebraska, where he might have to be a little bit more serviceable. I don't think they're going undefeated. I can't really see just losing one game, but could they be right there and make the playoffs with 2 losses? The more that I think about it, the more that with a running game that can smash and a defense, even conservatively, I'm looking at it as a top 15 defense. The more you study the defense, if you're a Michigan fan, the more you like it. And any way you want to go, you want to look to last year, you want to look at the coaching, you want to look at the personnel, you want to look at the depth, you want to go with what you've heard over the last week or 2 or 3, or what you'll hear next week about what the coaches might say about the players that are emerging over there. You feel pretty good about the defense and what they bring. And then I was studying, the right word, studying is fine. It works here. special teams. Zavada, the best kicker in football. We saw Hollenbach, the punter, the left-footed punter in the bowl game. He looked pretty good. Samaj Morgan as a returner, whoever else is going to be the return game, I would put above average. Field goal kicking, the best. Punting, what we saw in one game is going to be fine. And then you think about, well, what about the coverage teams? And the coverage teams, if you have depth on your team, and it was like what Jim Scarcelli, the former Wolverine, was talking about on Monday when he was spotlighting the linebacker Nathaniel Owosu Boateng, the NOB. And he said he'll be a big impact on special teams. When you just start going through the players, the ones that there'll be some that'll be in the two deep, but there's going to be a bunch. I can just think of Jacob Oden, Mason Graham, Shamari Earls, Josiah Edmond. You just keep going through. Cole Sullivan, Troy Bowles. Sorry. Not everyone's going to be in that too deep. I know Sullivan probably is, but who was I also thinking of? Nate Marshall, who's going to be a true freshman. There's going to be the way they recruited and the young talent that they have. I think the special teams, I would put a plus next to it. And I'm thinking that they should be able to win the special teams battle every week. That's big. It's big. If I had Scar here, he'd love it. You start talking special teams with anybody that played football or coached football. They love you talking about the special teams, but Michigan's looks like on paper that they are a plus special teams club, and that can be big for them when you're talking about what's going to be the little things that can make a difference in making the playoffs and then, falling just short. And so the other part is the schedule. And the schedule, or do you think it's, a gauntlet, the toughest in the country? It's the Big Ten portion is very manageable. You don't have Penn State on there or Oregon, two teams that are supposed to be very good. The Illinois, another team, they're supposed to be the Indiana of last year. Indiana's not on there. So those four, Michigan doesn't play them. So, it seems, I don't know if it's a break that way. They are playing at Oklahoma. They have a good schedule. And so for that part, I think that they could get through that and have it be manageable. What you would love for them to just have one loss heading into that Ohio State game, and then you feel like you're already in. But would I take today, Michigan having two losses, hosting Ohio State on November the 29th, Michigan wins. They're likely getting into the playoff. They lose. They're likely going to be on the outside looking in. I like it when there's a lot at stake in the Michigan-Ohio State game. I'm not hoping that they lose ball games, but that's a position that if we were playing the game, would you take that today? Two losses heading into the Ohio State game, and they win, they're in, they don't, and they're on the outside looking in. I would take it. Take it. That is something that I would go with. So that's what I see when it comes down to the playoffs this year. That is how I am looking at it. As always, here on the Maize and Blue Review, and good afternoon, Michigan football, we go to the people to see what they are thinking and what's top of mind for them. Don't forget, a little bit of basketball right after we read some feedback, and then more football and recruiting, NIL, everybody's favorite NIL talk. We've got all of that coming up, so stay with us as we work through and see what the people are going to say. Sam, don't worry, Sam. I've got you covered with studying the basketball team Sam is saying he's got no concerns on the defense. Yeah, I don't think you should be concerned about the defense. I did have somebody tell me, I don't know, what was it? Was it during? Yeah, it must have been during spring ball that there was a former player. I don't know who the player was, but the player had told someone who told me that they were concerned about the secondary. And so that got everybody worked up. Like, what? The secondary is supposed to be great. I don't know. That was what a former player, that was what somebody had told me. It got people worked up. And there you go. But I'm not overly concerned. Like, I don't think they're going to be as good as last year, but I think they're going to be pretty good. Rashad agrees about Michigan being right there knocking on the door. Right now, Rashad will say they just miss it. But in 26, they'll be top 5. Yeah, I mean, that's such a reasonable, Rashad, you're very reasonable. Now, is this a sport? Is this, if you're a Michigan fan, is how far does being reasonable go? I mean, do you want somebody who just like, no, I don't want to hear that they'll just miss out. I get that, but it's a very reasonable take. That's it's just, I feel like I'm spoiling it for myself because I feel like I'm going to flip to saying that they are going to make it. But right now I am still sitting around thinking more like Rashad, that they could just miss it. Sam's talking about getting some stud wide receivers. Always good to see Hadley. Hadley, what do you think about the font on the, I don't know if you watched the show or if you're just listening to it or whatever, but I saw that they changed the script and whatever I'm reading here. And, it looks good, but I noticed that I have to really lean in. Hadley says the concern for him will be wide receivers and who steps up. Underwood will throw the ball. Who do you think will be the leading wide receiver this year? Also sad to see Plocky retiring after, I don't know if it's 35 years. It's been quite a long run. Yeah, Bev Plocky, great success, women's gymnastics coach. Tremendous coach, obviously, when you're there for nearly 4 decades and she has decided that she's hanging him up. I don't know if it's that, if you're Plocky, there's very few coaches that are able to pick and choose when they want to call it a career. And with her record, she would have been in that position. So I wish her all the best. The 11 years that I worked in radio in Ann Arbor, there have been many times that I interviewed Bev Plocky. And then I also have to give it up for Coach and this was a while ago. I was there from, 94 to 2006, so a long time ago. But Coach had told me at that point, hey, do you want to talk to some of the players? And so then I would talk with some of the players. And then Coach would say, do you want the players to come in studio? And I said, bring it on. And then, I don't know, at least the last 2 years, it could have been a couple more years than that, Plocky's gymnast would come in studio and they would talk with me, and the gymnast would talk. Yeah, sure, they're talking about gymnastics and they're talking about the Olympics, but they're talking about everything. They're talking football, and I really enjoyed that part. But I don't know how many other coaches back then, they weren't really saying, hey, go ahead, bring the athletes and talk to them about anything, get their personalities out there, and there you go. So congratulations to Bev Plocky. I think that everyone should be of the opinion that it's going to be Donovan McCulley who's going to be wide receiver number 1 for Michigan. He is going to be the most targeted wide receiver. He's big, so catching touchdowns, I think he'll lead Michigan in touchdown receptions. And with targets for the wide receivers, However, you might feel like it's a hot take. I've already given it a couple times over the spring and summer, but I think the player that is going to lead Michigan in receptions and then so probably targets is not a wide receiver. It's tight end Hogan Hansen. And Hansen is a little bit forgot about, but, you think about what Loveland did last year. I think about Hansen, who was the player that I think what it was. Davis Warren was targeting when he threw that interception down in the horseshoe. That was Hogan Hansen. And who was the players that were going off with Bryce Underwood in the spring game? It was the tight end. And so I don't think it's that hot of a take. It's based on what I saw last year, what I've seen from the player, what I know about the propensity for young quarterbacks to look for a security blanket. All those things to me add up to Hansen being the player. So I think if you want to sound smart around other Michigan fans, talk about Hansen being the leading receiver in the target hog for Michigan. And then pick McCulley to be the touchdown reception leader for this team. And then pick a player that's going to surprise you, that is better than advertised, that people are sleeping on, whatever kind of category you want to put it in. And that would be Samaj Morgan. I like Samaj Morgan. Sometimes you see a player and you see the talent. And I saw that a lot from Morgan in the championship season. Did I see anything from Samaj Morgan last year that I liked? Not really. Nothing comes to mind from Samaj Morgan last year, but that was a product of not having a quarterback. When I think about Morgan as a freshman, they would just throw him a little smoke screen. Next thing you know, he's sifting through the defense and he's running in for a touchdown. It's like, wow, this guy, get him the ball. And other times he's sitting down, a little curl route, just sitting there. And then, J.J. McCarthy's firing it to him and then he's turning up field. I liked it. And of course, I liked the punt return in the Big Ten title game against Iowa. I like that as well. So Morgan did he take a step back? Took a step back. I thought he was going to be excellent last year, but you have to have a quarterback throwing you the ball. It reminds me of my fantasy football team when I had DeAndre Hopkins. I'm in his keeper league. And so Hopkins, I have him when he's with the Texans, and he's going great. But then they trade Deshaun Watson, and then I don't even remember who the quarterbacks were. It was the big, tall dude. They ended up trading to the Browns. Brock Osweiler, I think it was. Hopkins can't throw the ball to himself. Hopkins goes from 12 touchdowns to like 2. He goes from 15 targets a game to 3 targets a game. And it is the most miserable experience. But, it wasn't. DeAndre Hopkins is a pretty good player. He's a hell of a player. He's a Hall of Famer. He won me $38 in the Super Bowl by picking him and putting money down on him for an anytime touchdown. Old D-Hop ended up scoring that TD for yours truly. But the point is you need that quarterback. I'm higher on Samaj Morgan than anybody out there. But so McCulley, touchdown scorer, Hansen, target leader, reception leader, Samaj, playmaker that people are sleeping on. That answer all the questions there, Hadley? I think so. What we're looking at. Again, tell me what you're thinking about the text there. Ferris is looking at Zavada, talking about 60-yard field goals. Yeah. Heck yeah. Smash the numbers. This is what we're looking for. 71% of the earth is covered by water, according to Smash the Numbers. He says, I just found this out because Dennis Fithian can handle Michigan football coverage for the best in the business. Hey, well, thanks. Smash the Numbers. If you'd have asked me that question, I don't know. Now that I know, it's hard to guess what I would have said. What I'm interested in, you're throwing it out there, is they put it's dark outside all of a sudden. They put it was a TikTok, one of these answer the questions, and it was U.S. geography. And I'm like, all right, I'll play. And I got a bunch of them wrong. But it was interesting. I'll put one of them out there. What state is bordered by the most other states in the United States? What state has the most shares the most borders with other states in the United States? We'll see. I did not get that one right. I think I said Colorado or something like that. Andres is ready for the Open Championship. So am I, Andres. I'm looking forward to it. I remember 6-7 years ago when they played at this course that Lowry ended up winning it on. I enjoyed it then. I'm coming back, and I've made my picks. I'm going to be a Schauffele and Hovland fan. Hovland, sorry. And nobody wants to hear my DFS picks. If you do, you can tweet at me at Dennis Fithian. All right. Sam's talking about Underwood. He says he had over 600-yard rushings with 6 TDs. If in trouble, he can be deadly on the ground also. You know what, Sam? If you listen to me when I watch the spring game, that my favorite play of the spring game was Underwood was flushed a little bit out of the pocket, and he put on the moves to bend around the defense, and then he took off, and I think it ended up being a 17-yard run. And some of those runs, the spring game, they're not going to hit the quarterback, they're blowing the whistle, but it really didn't matter. What you could see is the ability and then the smoothness. Sometimes you just, as fans, scouts, they watch every single rep of every single guy, but sometimes you just see a play or two and you just see it. And when I saw Underwood make that run on that move, I was sold on anything that he wants to do in terms of running the ball. Yeah, I think he wants to sit back there and be a pocket passer. I think that he will learn how to maneuver around in the pocket, how to just, a little escapability, just so you can buy yourself some time so you can throw the ball down there. Those are things that I doubt that he's going to be great at those kind of things. Brady was so great at that. Give him a snap, a little shuffle, 3 shuffles to the right or whatever it is. You see some of these guys, JJ, it took him a little while to get that. I think he'll get better at that, but the ability and it wasn't even shift. It was smoothness. It was a great athlete just making a move where I watched, and I'm sure everybody else in the stadium just was like, yep, this guy is, you knew he was, he's special, right? But you saw it and you're like, okay, that's kind of why they're talking about him being special. Ferris talking about Oklahoma being a couple-point favorite. What do we think about that line? I think about, Hammer and Michigan on the money line. No, I think I would not bet that game if I was a Michigan fan. What I would do is what I am going to do. I would just sit back and in all of its glory, and you're going to root for Michigan and watch the game and know that that is one of the very likely games that they're going to drop this year. Try to keep it in perspective with the young quarterback. But if somehow they win, I think you also have to keep it in perspective, because if they win that game, the chances of Michigan then going to the playoff goes way up. But you're just going to feel like you're going to, it's going to be hard either way. It's hard every time out where you win a big game to not go overboard. And then it's hard, that's what you do as a fan. And the media does it too. You go way overboard one way or the other. Keeping perspective in that game. But boy, if they win that game, it's not the percentage chance that they're going to then be the real deal and be a college football playoff contender is heading up. And I love the schedule in that you're going to find out week 2 just how you feel like they could be a flat out contender right after that. Because if they win that game, most people are going to pick. I'm going to pick Michigan to lose that game. But if they win that game, there's going to be a lot of people like, I told you, which is fine. But my other point was then just 2 weeks later, they go to Nebraska. Right now, that is also a game that I think they're going to drop. If they win that game, then there's going to be a lot of sticking your chest out, talking about, what do you know about football? Michigan's the greatest. Woo! Let's go. September Heisman, September playoffs. Let's do it. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting. All right, let's run through a few more. Andre's talking about the text, and he says it's hard to read. Okay, good. Well, so Andres, are you more of a, I feel like you're, 25 years old. So if it's harder for the younger guys, what do you think about when you're, getting up there like Ferris? I'm just kidding. Ferris is young at heart. He's talking about the font being cool, but it has washed out spots like an old typewriter that is running low on ink. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. And for me, sometimes I'm looking in there and I'm thinking, well, if there's then a spelling error, what am I doing? DJ Daffy. I like how you're looking there in that maize and blue hat, Daffy. Takes me back to my cartoon days. Daffy, I've got to say that there was one time that I wasn't in a fraternity, but I was working with a guy who was in a fraternity, and he said, well, you got to come over to the fraternity house. We're going to watch, and we're watching 8 hours of Bugs Bunny. This was a sell. Now, he could have said, hey, we're going to have hundreds of women here, and keg stands, everything else. I probably would have went to that kind of party too. But he said, we're watching 8 hours of Bugs Bunny. And I said, I'm in. And I went there, and that's exactly what happened. There was 8 hours, but involved in that, of course, was some Daffy Duck, some Foghorn Leghorn. And I don't know if I've watched 8 minutes since that 8 hours, but that was one of the great nights of my life. But Daniel reposted this stream. I don't know what that means, but hey, repost it. Let's go, DJ Daffy. How about that? See some people talking about the baseball game last night. Tennessee and Missouri are bordered by 8 states, thanks to Alexa and Hadley. You are correct. On that, I didn't say Missouri. I said Colorado, which, so is way off. But who knows if they were right on all of them, because they didn't say anything about Missouri. They did say Tennessee, though. So that's it. All right, couple more, then we go to basketball. Andre says, Nebraska has shown me nothing to indicate that they can hang with Michigan in any stadium. They're going down bad. Also, my vision is 2020. And then we have Ferris, who is talking about you veteran young guys. What channels could you get as a kid on both UHF, VHF? People are like, what does that mean? He says he grew up near Boston. Big things were on Channel 56, Creature, Double Feature, and Star Blazers. I'll play this game. I didn't have cable until I was a until I was in 8th grade. So it was a lot of being in Detroit, watching Channel 20, Channel 50, and then just 2, 4, and 7. About it. 56 would have been like PBS or something like that. Channel 50 and 20, you're running out in the mornings, like in the summer, it would be something like a Green Acres, the Beverly Hillbillies, later on, Sanford and Son, those are the kind of things that you'd go with. Later on, I remember that, again, when I was in college, that I had 3 roommates my final year, and by the time June rolled around, all of them moved out, but we had a lease. We had a house, and we had a lease, all the way up until August. So for 2.5 months, I lived in this big house all by myself. The cable got turned off. It wasn't in my name in June. So I had to rely on just getting the channels, and I would get CBC for hockey, which was, out of Windsor. And then, but the only things, I only watched 2 things. I watched the Tigers when they would come on Channel 4, and I would watch Jeopardy. That's it. Jeopardy or the Tigers. And then if there was something going on with hockey, that would be it. And then they went where you needed an antenna and everything else. One other, now that I'm thinking about it, Ferris, just pulling reception in over the TV before they went to the antennas that you had to have them, the whatever it is to get the digital TV if you don't have cable anymore. I took my mom has a cottage up north, Clare, Michigan, no cable, just the rabbit ears. And I would go up there. I remember I went up there for 9 days by myself, and it felt like 2 months. But the only thing that you get on TV, the only sports, there was a little bit of Wimbledon. That was it. Ironically enough, I used to go up there a lot during the All-Star break. I'd go up to the bar and watch the All-Star game. So that's it. Sam is creeping up there. That was being 50's the way to go, Sam. 50's the new 30. That's what I say, Sam. All right, so we go from football and we take the turn and we go to basketball. Now, are people talking about Michigan being in the Final Four this year? I am saying that they are, in fact, talking about Michigan going to the Final Four this year. Michigan, if I had to guess right now, for the upcoming college basketball season, they will be firmly put into whoever does it. And then when they come out with the official Associated Press preseason poll, that they will be in the top 10. No, they're not going to be number 1. You got Duke and you got UConn, you got Purdue. I just said Duke. I'm not really sure. Duke is Duke. They seem like they're always, UConn seems like but Purdue will be in there. I've seen Purdue. They'll be in the maybe number 1, but Michigan will be in the top 10. And I think that they will reside in the top 10 all year long. And then you're starting to think about, well, can they compete for the Big Ten championship? Well, Purdue is the only team that clearly in the offseason you look at and you say, Purdue is going to be the team to beat. So they're going to be chasing Purdue all year long. Purdue could be the number 1 team in the country. So, but they'll be right there knocking on the door. And then you start thinking about the NCAA tournament. And if you're top 10, that's a 3 seed. You'd like to be a 2 seed. If you could offer me up a 2 seed for Dusty May in his second year with this group that he has, I would sign up for that immediately for the Maize and Blue. And I went to watch them practice on Sunday. And Yax is everything that you're hoping that he's going to be. Listening to him talk after the practice, standing out there, he's got the kind of personality that you like. He's got the kind of game that you like. I put an isolated ISO cam on him when I was there at the practice. And afterwards, after watching him in person, I said, he reminds me of a former Michigan basketball player, the forward, Maurice Taylor. That's who he plays like. That's who his body style is like. That's what his game is like. But Yaks was saying all the right things. And you're talking about a guy who could be the Big Ten player of the year. You're talking about a guy who could be the national player of the year. He looks like an All-American, and you got a good one there. You need a star, and Michigan's got one with Lindenborg. So that's great. MJJ, any team would take Morez Johnson Jr. in the country. This guy, if you watch the USA Under-19 team, he was fabulous, and he got better during the tournament, and the championship game was his best game. There's no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that Morez Johnson Jr. is going to be a terrific rebounder, that he is going to get tons of offensive rebounds and putback jams, that he is going to terrorize opponents with his shot blocking ability. And he is a shot blocker, a dunker, and a rebounder. All of those things. The other two things, he was throwing some low post moves in there that I looked at and said, not too shabby. I think that he's got he can grow a lot there, but I like what he was showing and displaying, just throwing around some of the moves that he did in Switzerland. And then, he only took 1 3 in Switzerland. It was in the semifinal game against Canada. But at that practice, he was throwing up more 3-point shots. I don't know how much he's going to do that, but his shot actually looks pretty good too. Fan favorite. Everybody will love Morez Johnson Jr. I guarantee that. Now, Ade Mara, the 7-3 with a 7-6 reach, just an unbelievable specimen. I was standing on the baseline watching him run out to would-be 3-point shooters with his arms up. And you're talking about trying to shoot over somebody that's 7'6", and go out to the basketball court and hand your buddy a tennis racket and say 2 tennis rackets, and then say, play defense on me. And you get to use 2 tennis rackets. That's what it's like going up against Mara. He, to me, is a real a question mark for this team, in that he could be a starter, and he could be a guy that could have like 12 points, 6 rebounds, and be a real factor. Dusty called him an elite passer. He shows a little showtime when it comes down to passing. He was throwing around the back passes for guys that were open for threes, which, that's a little bit of mustard. But so he's intriguing. He could also be someone that just impacts the team a little bit off the bench. Like, he could be an 8th or 9th guy that you'd say, what did he average last year at UCLA? Like 6 points and 3 boards. He can also be that. But I would say a conservative estimate would be that he would be a 10-5 guy. Well, we'll see. That's one that is up in the air. I said this last year about Will Cheddar and Damari Burnett, that every winning team in the country would want Will Cheddar and Damari Burnett on their team. Both of these guys, Cheddar's 6'8", and he can shoot it. Damari Burnett's 6'5", he can shoot it. Shooting is a huge part, stretching the floor. Both of these guys, they're their best 2 shooters. I said it a bunch last year. Give me 5 Will Cheddars, and I'll play against anyone. I love him coming off the bench, heat check, throwing it up from anywhere, vocal leader, senior. Burnett, super senior, coming back. He could shoot it as soon as he crosses the timeline. Love it. Downtown, Cheddar and Burnett, 2 guys that any team would take in the country. 2 freshmen coming in who are both highly thought of. And I don't know if I'm telling you that they could be great. If you told me that they were going to be great, I could say I can see it. And I think Trey McKinney, everybody would say, yeah. I mean, he is, you follow the rankings and everything else right there. Very highly thought of. Great kid, mid-range game. He doesn't look like a freshman. He looks like he could play immediately. He'll be a factor. Sky's the limit for McKinney. He looked great. I didn't know much about Winters Grady. I watched him shoot a lot on Sunday at the practice. He looks like he could be a factor right away. He's 6'5", and he looks like he could be a factor coming in off the bench as a long-range shooter. I think that's what he's going to be. He's going to be coming in, a three-point specialist, a little bit shorter and more of a wing guy than, Cheddar sometimes mixes it up down low. But I think Grady's coming in. He's got the green light, and he's just going to be throwing it up from everywhere. How many he makes, we'll see. Roddy Gale scored 26 points in the tournament last year to get Michigan to the Sweet 16. That was a career high from him. So we have seen Gale at his best, and he did it after everyone was totally against Roddy Gale, hoping that he wouldn't play anymore. He was a turnover machine, that it was just didn't happen, that he was lost, but then he was found. What's a better story than the shepherd who leaves his flock for the lost sheep and goes after and finds them, and then he brings them back? Not that he was lost and he kind of just lost in playing his game. Nothing bad that way, but his game was gone. And then he threw up 26 in the NCAA tournament and got Michigan to the Sweet 16. Roddy Gale, I lean in to players who play their best in big-time games, and Gale put up a 26-piece in the tournament. So straight line driver, harness that offense that he brings. He's an incredible athlete. I love him coming off the bench, and let's see what he can do. Let's have a Roddy Gale experience. The backcourt of Godot and Kaysen, they will both have their opportunities. Neither, I would say, is a knockdown three-point shooter, but both of these guys can at will take people off the dribble and get into the lane. Godot is super quick. Kaysen has the body of he reminds me of Chauncey Billups when he played for the Pistons. Put anybody that he wants on his hip and go anywhere he wants with the ball. He is he's that kind of player. He reminds me a little bit. He doesn't have quite the trunk that Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, who played at Villanova, won a championship with the Raptors. Kaysen's got a little bit of him in him too. In that he's just got the kind of body that if you're a skinny little guard trying to check him, he can just take you at will. And it's the most important position on the team. We'll see how those guys end up shooting. But, hey, you leave them wide open and they just sit out there. Let's see if they can get close to 40%. It's going to be a big key for them. But I'm bullish on the Michigan basketball team. I think everybody that watches them will be as well. They'll be a preseason top 10 team. It's a good time to be a Michigan basketball fan. I know we're sitting here in the middle of July. Long way till basketball season. Not so long to football season, but both teams, you always think that with football, almost always. Basketball, things are looking great. That's what I think about it. So we go to basketball. Oh, I was going to say, nobody's commented on basketball. It's going to be like a little bit sad there that nobody's commenting on basketball, but it might not be true. I was looking at Ferris commenting on Channel 9. And let's see, we're talking about bowling here. Sam, we'll talk a little basketball. Cheddar has been here a while, hanging in there like a loose tooth. Like it. That's just a piece of cheese. And Sam saying he likes Kaysen pretty smooth. Yeah, he is pretty smooth. I'm with you on that. But it's going to be an exciting time. Now we go to some more football. And what I have up on the screen, there's two different shots that I have up here. One, it says biggest spenders in college football. This is from Pete Nakos on 3 Rivals. There he is. He put this graphic up. And this is according to Nakos, who, according to his sources, this is not something that you could just dial up and look at with like some kind of Freedom of Information Act. So this is the word from this particular reporter about who is spending the most this year in college football. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Texas Tech. And you saw, what are they? Is it 36 million or something crazy like that Texas Tech is thrown out there? Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Oregon. All of these make sense. And now Texas Tech, wouldn't make sense, except we kind of know that they are using that oil money to lure people to Lubbock there. Texas A&M, they spent before there was NIL. They're still spending. Same thing with Oregon. All these teams that used to spend when there wasn't, when they were below the board NIL, they're playing above the board NIL now. Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas A&M, Miami. These are all NIL teams. USC at 7, tied with Michigan. And then you got Tennessee and Auburn to round out the top 10. Now, if you just would have told me to put together a list of the top spending NIL teams, who I thought they were who I thought they would be, I think I would have put all of these teams in here. And with the news about Texas Tech, that was kind of there. But I know Texas spends. I know Ohio State spends. I know Oregon spends. Texas A&M, check. The U, check. USC, check. Michigan, I didn't know that they were in the top 10, but they were polling guys. They have been polling guys this cycle, left and right. I think I unplugged. There I am. They have been polling a lot of guys. When it came down to, let me think about when I thought Michigan, I knew they were spending. Bear McWhorter, got him. When they got Blade McHale, Titan Davis, Carter Meadows. I mean, you knew that Michigan was playing big boy. I don't know why this is going on now. Michigan was playing big boy football then. What I thought was interesting is that I put the corresponding Rivals 300 team rankings over to the left, and then I have what at least this reporter thinks are the big spenders in NIL right now. Georgia has the number 1 ranked recruiting class right now, but they're not in the top 10 in terms of spending. If I'm a Georgia fan, I'm saying, awesome. We're Georgia. We're not in the top 10 spending, and yet we're number 1. If I'm USC and I have the number 2 recruiting class and I'm top 7 in spending, I'm saying money well spent. Great. I'm thinking the same thing about Texas A&M. Notre Dame is out there saying, hey, we're not in the top 10, but we're number 4 ranking. We're doing a great job. Ohio State always spends. And so Ohio State, it's almost exactly, they're almost getting the bang for their buck. Hey, they're top 3 in spending and they're top 5 in recruiting rankings. If it's a weird thing to say, but if I'm a Buckeye fan, I'm thinking about brushing my teeth and putting on some deodorant, but I'm also thinking about, hey, not so bad in terms of how you're spending. The U, they just like spending money. Clemson's doing a good job. Clemson's a pretty interesting team. Is Clemson playing LSU opposite of Michigan on August 30th? I don't like that. So, but then we get to Michigan. I'm bearing the lead here. 7th, maybe, in spending money. And they have the 8th ranked recruiting class right now. Now, look, I don't know how much of a guess the guy that is reporting, coming up with his numbers, and also recruiting rankings are subjective. This is Rivals. It's on 3/Rivals, but Rivals does the team rankings here. So I don't exactly know where they're at when it comes to the other services, but if we're just going on this one, not too bad. Michigan spending in the top 10, and they have a top 10 recruiting class. What you don't want, and I guess I'd have to look at the full list to see if you're somebody like who's spending a lot, but is not in it could be Texas Tech. Texas Tech is not in the top 10, and yet they have spent the second most amount of money. And you're like, hey, shouldn't we be in the top 10 if we're spending the second most amount of money? You have to overspend. I was looking at the Big 12 today. It's for Texas Tech. plays and all these, Arizona State was picked 16th last year in the league and they won it. You got BYU. I mean, it's very hard. Iowa State, Kansas State, keep going down the list in the Big 12 trying to make predictions on who's going to be. Arizona State again. Texas Tech now in the mix with an influx of talent. Of course, that's not going to matter for this upcoming season, but Texas Tech, Mahomes is involved. Is there another team that is, I guess I don't know, just know where Tennessee and Auburn are on that list. So there it is. I thought it was a little bit interesting taking a look at it. Sam's like, surprising that Alabama's been doing a good job recruiting. I'm surprised that they're not on either of the lists because they have scored a few. I have a friend who's an Alabama fan, and as soon as he was crying about not being able to spend like the big dogs, they came up and served up like 2 5-stars. But it is surprising that they're not in there. This is just the team. Both of these, this stuff went down today. The team rankings, this was just pulled out. I put this up there from the ranking for today. So this is as current as you can get. And then this particular NACO's on 3 story just came out today too about the spending. So that's it. Sam says Ohio State is at the top of spending as usual. Yeah. Ohio State's they're always there. I don't really look at I don't look at it as a negative at all. I wish, when I say that I wish Michigan was number 1 in money that they were spending, well, I would expect them to be in the top 3 in the recruiting rankings. If they were, would I be mad or saying, why is Michigan, why are they spending so much money on recruiting? I would be like, they're taking advantage. They have the money. If you have deep pockets, I look at it like this. If I'm the Yankees or if I'm the Dodgers, I like bringing in the big names and I like having the highest salary and I'm expecting to win the World Series. If I am sitting over there and it's coming down where I could pay the players over there. So yeah, if I'm Texas, I'm spending the most money. Now Texas, that's the one that they're just outside the top 10. But if I'm a Horns fan, I'm happy that they're spending money. I would be happy of all of these teams. People are saying, well, it's not just spending money. Texas Tech no, it's not just spending money. There's a lot of things, but being able to recruit great players, I mean, we can sit here and talk about a lot of different things. Would I want a great coach? Would I want great players? Would I want I would want all of it. You need a lot of it almost across the board. But I want talent. But do I want just the biggest ticket items? You just go back for the last couple of years. Texas A&M is the one that jumps out. Just a couple of years ago, Jimbo was getting everyone. He had the number 1 recruiting class, and it was like everybody, Jimbo. Remember him and Saban were going back and forth? Saban's like, we couldn't afford the kind of players that Jimbo was getting. Jimbo shot back. Sankey got on the phone, was telling those guys, hey, stop talking about paying. You guys both are out there paying players, and you're not supposed to be. Stop talking about it. But it all went south really quick for Texas A&M. You just bringing in the highest paid players. You got to coach them up. You got to also, you do have to look at the player and see how they fit in. It's almost like Texas A&M is just looking at the recruiting rankings and saying, let's just spend on the biggest guys. You can be pretty good that way, but you need to fit it. You need to fit the puzzle in there. A lot of it. You can't just bring in the great players with the recruiting rankings. Winning a recruiting national championship is fun in the offseason, but boy, you fall on your face, you get a lot of criticism pretty quick. So that's it. Let's see. We'll take a couple here. Bimba Keep stacking top 10 classes. Michigan will win more championships. We also develop. Yeah, I think for Michigan, the way I look at it, I'm not trying to I'm trying to be objective on the whole thing. Michigan is always, they almost do it to a fault. You hear them talk about, well, it's not just the money. It's, we're looking at character. We're looking at the fit. We're talking about their parents. And we really, the players got to recruit us. We got to recruit them. Those kind of things. Some of that sounds a little trite, but Michigan's, I believe a lot of it. Not all of it, but I believe that Michigan, they are looking at how a kid's going to fit in and I don't know how much character, how much you can, find out about that, but the fit of the kid and how they feel about that. They're not just, chasing the stars. But I think the part where, you're saying development, that's something. I mean, every year I see teams saying, well, we can develop here and, but why can't, you could take some shots if you wanted to. You could try to take some shots at Michigan and developing in certain areas, like running back, you could say, but, I think they do a good job. What I'm saying there. Ferris is saying money cannot buy wins over Michigan. And it's been 2,055 days. That's a shot at Ohio State. Wolverine J, it's a sweet picture of Corum, thinks the defense will be top 10. Yeah, I think it could be. I went very conservative and talked about Michigan being a top 15 defense, but, if they're a top 10, that would not be that surprising at all. I was very conservative on that particular approach. The last piece of feedback is from Ferris, who has put the now famous line from Jim Harbaugh that Michigan is transformational, not transactional. That was what Harbaugh said. We are both now. Yeah, but you know what? You want to lean a little bit on both of those. It's nice that you're transactional, but you don't want to just be transactional. I do think there was a lot. I know just Ohio State won it last year, but Ohio State has always recruited great. I mean, the way that they've recruited, they should have more national championships. And they probably should never lose to Michigan. But, Michigan turned the tables on them, and Michigan was getting guys that were not as highly thought of, that were playing together, that were beating the guys that were last year was a great example. JTT and Sawyer. Those guys won championships, but when it came down to playing Michigan, these guys got no wins. What was it? Honingford last year? Not last year, the year before. He was a tight end tackle for Michigan. He took JTT and just slammed him into the ground. Sawyer, won the championship and everything, but how did he play against Michigan? He had the pick, right? That's it. So that's going to do it for today's show. We'd love to see you. I've noticed that a few of you have popped up over on the Maize and Blue Review, and it's great to see you over there because what we're doing right here, chit-chatting about Michigan, anything that comes up, the day's events and how it plays into the upcoming season, that's what we're doing over on the Maize and Blue Review. So we'll see you over there. On Three Rivals, Maize and Blue Review. It's a good afternoon, Michigan football. Everybody have a great day. Stay cool. And we'll talk with you on Friday. See you then. Bye. That mic over there. Hands free now. You want a show after the show? A curveball? Oh, yeah, a little curveball.